Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final event in our Wines of Germany USA's virtual German Wine from Home series. We're so glad to have you here. And today we will be discussing German wines and food pairings. This Corks and Forks session will be hosted by Wines of Germany Minneapolis Ambassador Amy Waller and Houston Ambassador Chris Poldoian. Since we all have been ordering a little bit more takeout than we typically do this year, we wanted to add excitement to your next restaurant order and talk about how to pair a variety of our favorite cuisines with German wines. In addition to the two wines that we will taste today, you should have also received a food delivery from a local restaurant in your market. So everyone knows a little bit more about what other attendees are eating and experiencing. Those in New York City have received traditional American foods from Bear Burger. Those in Minneapolis received comfort food from Handsome Hog. In Houston, they're eating Vietnamese cuisine from Tyne and Sandwiches. And in LA, they received Mexican cuisine from Tequila Organica. Before we get started, we wanted to flag that all of your videos have been shut off, so feel free to move around, eat, drink, and get comfortable. If you have any questions throughout the session, please drop them into the Q&A feature at any time. You can also use the chat feature to share any comments, thoughts, or responses to the content. And be on the lookout for polls throughout the session. We would love to hear from you. If you're interested in posting on social, please use our handle at GermanWineUSA and our hashtag GermanWineFromHome. With that, I'll kick it over to Amy and Chris, who will introduce themselves, share their background on restaurant and hospitality happenings and what they're currently doing. Then we'll start tasting before expanding on each of these food pairings.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. It's amazing to have so many people from all over the country together, drinking the same wine, but with very different food. Amy, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you, Wines of Germany. Very happy to be able to connect over a bottle of wine, bottles of wine, and a meal with all of you. This is our new normal, which is really exciting that we can all still get together and connect and share a meal and share a bottle. And Chris, I'm happy you're here with me. This is exciting.
Yeah, this is exciting.
This is so exciting. Great background, by the way, Chris.
I had to bring in, a little bit of help here, Yeah, she's always a stand-in here, always a popular guest. Yeah, super stoked. This is going to be a lot of fun to have so many different styles of food with these wines. I think we all know about how versatile Riesling can be with so many different things. Amy and I caught up last week to kind of hash out what we wanted to talk about, and it just basically turned into both of us fanning over these wines and talking about all the different like BYOB experiences we've had, and all that stuff. So super, super fun.
Yeah. Well, my name is Amy Waller. I know a lot of you, but I don't know all of you. So I'll go over my background a little bit. I am located in beautiful Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we have had something like 10 or 12 inches of snow this week. What is happening?
So wild.
Chris and I couldn't be on like two opposite ends of the spectrum for where we live. So that was another conversation we had is, okay, you're 90 degrees and I've got 8 inches of snow today. So very opposite ends of the spectrum. I have been in restaurants all my life. Hospitality is in my blood. My mom had a restaurant growing up. I used to get off the bus there. And I really got involved and interested in wine maybe like 10 years ago. It hasn't been that long. I've really moved quickly through it. So I've done the introductory CMS course, the certified CMS course. I'm in the queue for advanced, just like Chris is. And my most recent role, I've got a couple, but COVID affects everybody. My most recent role, I was at a restaurant in downtown Minneapolis called the Bachelor Farmer, RIP. We do I've got my little TBF glass here with me today, so it's with me always. I was the wine director and the assistant general manager there. And now the restaurant has closed permanently. So took a little time off did another event with Wines of Germany. I've been drinking a lot of German wine, obviously. And now I've landed at a smallish retail shop in South Minneapolis. It's called France 44. A lot of you know it. And I am the sommelier and group sales manager because we're selling, as all of you probably know, we're selling a ton of virtual wine events, very similar to this, to consumers, because people still want to connect. People still want to get together, share a bottle of wine, maybe do a little bit of learning, but also maybe just like relax and talk to other people via Zoom or your other platforms. And so selling a lot of virtual events right now. And my history with German wine was really, really solidified at the Bachelor Farmer because it was a staple on our menu all the time. Scheurebe, Sylvaner, Dornfelder, Spätburgunder, Weissburgunder. I mean, Riesling for days, Sekt. At any given time, we had 6 different German Rieslings on the menu because they do a lot of different things. And spoiler alert, they pair really well with food. And so got involved with Wines of Germany just about a year ago officially, and have just been learning and drinking and learning and drinking and loving things ever since.
What was your favorite pairing on the menu there at the restaurant? Of all those German wines, was there one that really stood out to you that you really loved?
Well, that's a really great question. And it's a very unexpected pairing for me. Obviously, Riesling with pork all day, all the time. Any sort, right? Obviously, late harvest Riesling with dessert. No kidding. The one that I love the most, and Stephen was there for that event last year. We did a consumer event with a lot of different wines, and we paired a variety. I think there were like 8 different German wines with a charcuterie board, but it was like not just charcuterie. So you've got meat and cheese, but at the restaurant too, we had our own foraging program and fermentation program. And so there were some like fermented turnip greens was a favorite with Pinot Noir. But I think that the best one, the one that blew my mind the most, was a pickled quail egg with Dornfelder from Weingut brand, which a lot of people know. That Dornfelder with the pickled quail egg, I was like, there's no way this is going to work. There is no way. And then guess what? It works, because of course it works.
And those brand wines are fantastic. We get those here in Texas, and the Pet Nat was something that was just always on our menu. And here in Texas, I mean, we joke that it's rosé season 51 weeks out of the year, but it's always time for sparkling wine here in Texas. We're always some level of dehydrated. You know, you're never fully hydrated here. So
of course, and wine helps with that.
Yeah, the high today, I think, is 87. It's currently 85. So when not to drink something like that?
Yeah, exactly. You know? It's 30 here, and it was snowing all morning. So a German wine for every season and every temperature ever.
Well, a little bit of yeah. So you know, for me, my kind of like falling in love with wine kind of paralleled or was really catalyzed by my love for Riesling. So I grew up in a house where wine was always on the table. My parents enjoyed drinking wine, but you know, their version of wine was maybe more in line with kind of like that Robert Parker, the bigger, the better, you know, California red wine. And that was kind of what I knew about the world of wine. I thought like Malbecs, like big high octane reds from California, that's where it was at. And it was as I kind of like started working in restaurants. So I worked for Hillstone or Houston's. I know we've got people from New York City and from Los Angeles here. So you might know their restaurants, the South Beverly Grill, the East Hampton Grill, or some of their other locations that go by other names, but really an amazing restaurant group. I worked as a manager with them, and slowly I started to learn about all these other categories of wine that maybe didn't fit within kind of the small box that my parents normally drank. You know, it would be having a Beaujolais, you know, maybe like a Morgon or something like that. And, you know, my parents shitting on that and saying that that's not a good wine, and me not really understanding, why is it that this wine tastes so good? Yeah. But I'm hearing from everyone else that it's not. So, you know, kind of bucking what my parents drank and learning for myself, you know, when I was like 21, 22, kind of like what those other styles of wine were. I mean, at a place like Houston's, I mean, it's a high volume restaurant. We served a whole lot of spinach dip, Hawaiian ribeyes, crab cakes, a whole lot of different cuisine.
Yeah.
And it was fun to see kind of the versatility of some of those other styles of wine. And really one of those things, kind of like Beaujolais, but you know, Riesling was something that my parents never drank. They knew Blue Nun, and I found these like really amazing dry styles of Riesling. I found all these other things coming out of Germany, grapes like Sylvaner, you know, Pinot Noir coming out of Germany. And I just thought to myself, there's so much going on here. So, you know, I worked for Hillstone, was a regional buyer for them for a bit. And then I wanted to really dial into the geekier side of wine. So I took over a wine bar here in Houston. And it was a small little wine bar called Camerata. The By the Glass list changed every day and guaranteed there was always something German on the list. Our goal was always to introduce people to something new and different, kind of so that they could experience the same sort of like aha moments that I was having. Yeah. So whether it was with a dry Riesling or a sect, you know, some German champagne method style of wine, you know, our goal was to really introduce people to something different. And then, you know, a couple of years ago in 2018, I had the opportunity to run the Berlin Marathon. And I had never spent any time in Germany before, but I figured if I'm going to run this race, I'm going to pre-game the marathon by visiting a bunch of different wineries. So, you know, going from JJ Pruhm to Meyer Neckel, down to Von Vinning in the Pfalz. I spent about a week before the marathon just adjusting to the time zone and getting a whole lot of electrolytes through all those wines. People always say, like, how can you drink that much wine before a marathon? The great thing about German wine tends to be lower in alcohol, you know, that touch of residual sugar in some of the wines, that's carbo loading. So we were good to go.
Yeah, everybody in the chat is basically like super casual marathon runner, no big deal. Nassim is saying that.
Yeah. I will say though, the night before the marathon, I was already in Berlin, and anyone who knows Berlin knows they have a pretty wild nightlife there. I was out until about 3 a.m. the day before the race, and woke up hungover, belly full of kebabs. The people of Berlin, the Berliners, love their kebabs. Not great food the night before a race. Maybe a week before the race that would have been fine, but the night before, not a good move. But I think of all the events I did at Camerata that involved German wine, and we did a lot of them, one that was really particularly fun, we hosted a Filipino chef at the restaurant. It was a 6-course meal. And the name of the event was Riesling versus Everyone. And we picked one wine. It was Spritzer's just Trocken Riesling. And we just had that Rheingau Riesling paired against a different wine for every course. You know, so for the duck course, we had Burgundy, and then we also had this Trocken Riesling. And we just saw how many people in the group saw, wow, Riesling can go with things that would otherwise pair with red wine. Riesling can go with things that normally pair with something more oaky. Like, it was cool to see that. Of all the events that I did involving German wine, was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really had my eyes open at the restaurant as to like what Riesling specifically, but quite frankly, all German wine can do with food. I hadn't had that exposure. Similar to you, it just, wine wasn't a thing on our table. That was not normal. And I sort of started my wine journey with some of those like bigger wines. And I'm not going to hate on those wines by any means, but
this is a safe space, Amy. If you want to hate, you can go for it.
You know what? I'm not even going to hate, because I think that you should drink whatever you like. So if you love it, you should absolutely drink it. Just drink it all. That way I don't have to. But what I will say is I started with these wines that were sort of like Parkerized, right? And I can remember having those with meals and being like, like this, what? And I sort of thought, like, you know, wine pairing was this like thing that maybe didn't really exist. And once I got to the restaurant, and specifically once I started working with these wines, I thought, wow. Can like, wine pairing is a real deal. And there are people out there that say it's not. And I challenge all of them, because wine and food pairings are the real deal. 1 + 1 = 42. Like that's what you end up with a solid food and wine pairing that complement each other so well. I think that's a good transition into Riesling. What do you think?
I think that's great. Do you want to take the lead and talk about Schaefer Froelich a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure all of you, there's a lot of trade people out there, so I'm sure all of you have seen the meme that's been going around about breakfast wine pairings. And I'm going to sort of like kick off with that once we get into Riesling, right? Because I think Riesling is the ultimate breakfast wine. Hello, Nassim is right. Shitty wine memes, everyone. Schaefer Froelich, today we're drinking the 2018 Estate Riesling Trocken. Mine showed up about a half an hour ago, so it's very exciting that we have this wine in front of us. I'm very excited. I had not actually had this vintage, but we've had Schaefer Froelich in an assortment of bottlings on the menu in the past. Riesling, as you so wonderfully brought up, can really do everything. I think it's the perfect breakfast wine pairing, but also Riesling against everyone is a legitimate conversation. And for me, German Riesling against everyone, there is not a region that has that much diversity and that much, like for me, German Riesling is focused. There is like this purity of fruit. There's precision. There's so much going on there. And there's such an incredible variety of styles that you can legitimately, and you did legitimately do a dinner where like you could pick a Riesling for every single course and it would be beautiful and intentional and it would totally work. So I think all of you know that Riesling is the noblest grape in Germany, grown more in Germany than anywhere else in the world. And every single region produces some Riesling. So the Schaefer Froelich is from the Naha. I've got this one here, but then I've also got this one here. I had a backup just in case. So we've got this bottling here that we have at the shop, the Wolkenstein. That is on primarily volcanic soils, but the estate Riesling here is dry. There's a little bit of RS on it, which I'm sure you've all noticed. It is from the Naha, again, a pretty small region with a vast variety of soil types, which makes for a lot of variation in Riesling as well. Other notable producers, one for me is Donhof. Do you have another notable producer, Chris?
Really Donhof. That's my go-to.
For sure.
It was interesting when I visited Donhof when I was there in 2018. I drove that day from Mosul down, and it was amazing. There was about a 10-degree temperature shift as I went. And I think when so many people think about Germany, their mind immediately goes to those beautifully terraced slopes in the middle Mosul. Yep. But Naha is, very bucolic, past a lot of farmland. I think at one point I actually had to stop because there were like cows crossing the road. It couldn't have been like more picturesque, but it really is like a beautiful farmland. A little more flat. You get really concentrated styles of wine coming from there. For me, Schaefer Froelich is a producer that I really love, that I've worked with for a while. I'm excited to see the GWC, the new importer for that, bring those wines back into town. And I'm glad that your bottles got to you, just a little bit ago. The other wine that we're tasting today is going to be Lights, which really beautiful label here. Lights is a producer that I'm really passionate about because it was actually one of the Lights wines that was my first wine that I ever got to put on a list when I became a buyer. It was when I was working at Houston's restaurant and I wanted to have a Riesling on our By the Glass list. We didn't have one at that point. And I was like, I want to do a Riesling. And I was trying to find something that was a good value. And Lights makes a Riesling from the Dragonstone Vineyard or Drachenstein Vineyard in the Rheingau. And that was a wine that just paired with everything. This is my first time trying the 2019 rosé. This is a rosé of Pinot Noir, as the Germans like to say, Spotburgunder. It's a direct press, really light, fresh. There's that vivacity to the wine. There's that verve. I think for a lot of people, when they try German wine, there's this moment where they feel that slight tingling sensation. And it's you know, a little bit of the fact that some of these wines can be a touch reductive. They're under scelled and they're under screw cap, but there's also just like that, like such bright acidity. You know, it's such a great palate cleanser after each bite, allows you to get back into it and try something different. Rosé as a category, in preparation for this, I reread Victoria James's book, Drink Pink. And I was amazed at how many different, you know, ways she thinks about pairing rosé with food. And it really is something, you know, that does go with everything as much as Riesling does. I mean, to me, rosé here in Texas, at least, you can have it with ceviche, you can have it with pork, you can have it with something a little fattier, especially a rosé that has this level of acidity to it.
Especially,
you know, yeah, I mean, again, 51 weeks out of the year, it's rosé season here in Texas. So just super fresh, easy to drink. There's like that slight herbal quality on the finish that I really love. And I know it's going to go really well with the spring rolls I got here. So
yeah, perfect. Well, maybe we should get into some of these pairings. I know New York has Bear Burger, and from what I'm aware of, I have something different, but that's what the fun of all of this is. So New York's got Bear Burger, and they've got the SoCal Burger, which is a turkey burger with cheddar cheese, avocado, alfalfa, pickled red onions, and then the American Burger, which is organic beef, leaf lettuce, onions, tomatoes, sweet pickles, ketchup, stone ground mustard. I think that a lot of times when people think burgers, I don't think that they always think wine. And most often I see people going towards beer for burgers. And while, you know, there's an occasion for every beverage, I think that by just going like the beer route, I think that you're really missing out. I will pair grilled burgers. I mean, summer burgers. When we were planning this, it was a little bit more summery. We didn't have, you know, 10 inches of snow on the ground. So when I think burgers, I do automatically think rosé. I think a chillable like Trollinger would be perfect with this as well. This rosé specifically, and now I have a glass full of Riesling, so let's grab another glass. This rosé specifically, I think that you sort of ticked all the boxes for it, like beautiful acidity, but there's like a roundness and depth. The fruit is stunning. And I think with a burger, this wine absolutely, Corey says, hell yeah, Trollinger, hell yeah, Trollinger. I think that this wine is lights out for burgers. And, you know, burgers don't have to be this heavy meal, right? So you've got this turkey burger that they're enjoying, and with the avocado and the pickled red onions and anything pickled, I just think that this wine is going to be lights out with that meal. I'm really curious in the chat for all of our New York viewers, like if you feel like the Riesling was better, because I also think this Riesling would work for that, absolutely. But this
Riesling is something that I will oftentimes pair with red meat, but it will be like a much riper style of Riesling. You know, I think a Trocken Riesling sometimes is a little harder to go with that. But here in Texas, we love our red meat. We've got steakhouses, we've got lots of meat, just meat for days, right? But
bigger in Texas.
I know. But for me, when I have those like more loud, more kind of intense styles of cooking, like grilling, you know, where something's getting seared, you're getting that caramelization. For me, that's when I want to go to like a Spatlese or even an Auslese. Like if you get a sweeter style of Riesling to pair with some of that, it works incredibly well. I mean, for me, that lighter Cabernet or Trocken or Halbtrocken, sometimes that can get overwhelmed by, you know, a Riesling. But if you have a more intense Riesling, a louder one, that's maybe riper in style, in that case, it can hold up. It can go toe to toe with any of those kind of red meats or more intense cooking methods.
And also, I think people are so used to like cab and a slab, but the truth of the matter is that we've all done that. Like everybody has done that. So like, let's find another way to pair this meal, right? And I think Riesling is incredibly interesting. I think with the burgers especially, like, give me a break. It totally works. And as you noted before, like, because it's so, the acidity is so like bright and beautiful, it clears your palate and like gets you ready for your next bite, which is essentially what we want to be doing with every single pairing. Obviously, we want these two things to complement each other, but like I want to take a bite and then take a drink and then go back for more. Like that's the ideal situation, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's really an example of, a food-friendly wine. I think sometimes we appreciate wines in almost like a cocktail or aperitif or digestif setting, where you're not going from bite to sip, and that's what a good food pairing is. It's not I'm going to take 5-6 bites of my food and then, oh right, I have a glass of wine in front of me and then revisit that. You really want them to play off of one another well. Corey, I see in the chat, he mentioned that residual sugar is a great friend to burgers. Is there anything that Amy, you think doesn't work with residual sugar? Is there any kind of like savory dish that can't really benefit from just a little bit of RS?
Truth be told, no, I don't think that there is. Between, I think that with food pairing, we're constantly talking about like acidity and, alcohol level and salt and spice. Acidity for me is the most important thing. However, sugar is our friend. And for me in the restaurant, it was a particularly difficult thing to sell to guests. So I sort of like grazed over it. Like, we don't need to talk about how much sugar is here because you won't know, because you're going to take a bite of this and you're not going to know. I think for most cuisine, a little bit of residual sugar. I mean, and sometimes, at least for me, a lot of residual sugar. I love. I think it's great. Acid and sugar are your friends in food pairing always. And especially, when we're talking about Riesling, the acid is like a laser beam, and that sugar like helps you sort of balance that situation. And those things come together so well for food that like, that's my dream pairing, something that has got this bright, beautiful acid, but that's got a little bit of like sugar on the finish to like, what's the word I'm looking for? To like ease that acidity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to balance it out. The other like secret, and this working in restaurants, a lot of savory dishes actually have sugar in them. I don't think I'm revealing any trade secrets when I talk about Houston's restaurant, but every single one of our salad dressings had sugar in it in some capacity. Some of them had just like actual sugar. Some had honey. Some had mirin. Mirin is something that I put in almost all of my salad dressings, and that has some serious sugar to it. But even in our French fry seasoning, there was sugar in that. Brown sugar was a huge part of the Hawaiian ribeye marinade. Pineapple juice was in that steak sauce. I mean, there's so many dishes that benefit from having sugar in the actual cooking that inevitably you want some wine that has a little bit of that too. And the other thing that I compare it to, is especially when we're talking about something like Riesling, I have guests picture lemonade, right? Like a really good glass of lemonade has to have sugar in it. You can't just have lemon juice and water and call it a day. There needs to be some sort of balance there where first what you get is that like really intense citrus character, and then it finishes with just like a little bit of sweetness. You need it there. So.
Okay, I'm looking at the chat here. I love how Corey says like a burger and Coke translated to wine.
Well, if you're Cactus Jack, it's a Sprite and your burger, if we're talking about the Cactus Jack burger.
Yeah. Jason says RS is also generally very guest friendly. Exactly. The only problem with that is that a lot of guests say, no, I don't like sweet wines. And so then I have to like bring them back.
But you like that margarita and you like that old fashioned.
Yes.
You like those cocktails, but.
Yes. Ray agrees with that. Nassim says guests get weird about sweet drinks. Yeah, they automatically think sugar equals sweetness, and that's not necessarily the case. Samantha says with the turkey burger, it brings out the flavors of the rosé, and she thinks it's a better pairing. I love that.
I love it.
Oh, and Nassim appreciates your lemonade and Coke conversation. That's true. Well, let's get on to comfort food. Because I have that here and I'm going to eat. So we're going to do that. I love the meal that we have in Minneapolis, and I'm interested to hear, whatever market you're in, please type in like, what is your go-to comfort food? I really want to hear that because I think that is different for everyone everywhere. And so comfort food is whatever is comfortable to you. This mac and cheese, straight comfort food. Grilled cheese, thank you, Lauren. Like for some people, it's mashed potatoes. Chris, what's your comfort food?
I'm gonna be honest with you. Vietnamese, like pho, like a really nice bowl is my comfort food. When I'm hungover or I'm sick or I'm just feeling a little down, I go to one of the Vietnamese restaurants here in Houston and I have a big bowl of pho and I'm right as rain by the end of it. So.
Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing French fries. What else is here? French fries. Serena says pho. Gumbo. Yeah, of course, Stephen, Louisiana. We got it. Also works with Riesling. Pho, French fries, lobster. Samantha, that is quite the comfort food. I don't know if you're from Maine or what's going on. That's impressive. I love Lauren's grilled cheese. I love that. Corned beef hash, Corey. Yes. Celine says cassoulet. New England clam chowder. Okay, so we have a lot. Tuna melt. Oh my gosh. A lot of people have different comfort foods. And that is like your, Paul says pizza. Thank you, Paul. That's like your past history, your experience in life. Those things are different for everyone based on what comforts you and what's happened in your life. In Minneapolis, we did what, Aaron? Cochinita pibil taco. I don't even know what that is.
Cochinita pibil. Ooh, that's mucho delicioso. I love that. That's very tasty. I'm excited.
Okay. That is a great comfort food. I was going to say mac and cheese, mashed potatoes. I'm also grilled cheese. Melissa says lobster rolls. Y'all are like very impressive with your comfort food.
So I grew up in Boston, and I will say lobster rolls, everyone has a favorite spot. For me, it's Grace Church. It's this small church that as a fundraiser does lobster rolls, and they're the best. Now, the real question for everyone out there that's saying lobster rolls, if you're a lobster roll hive, are you doing like a Maine style lobster roll? Are you doing with mayonnaise? Or are you doing like the Connecticut or Rhode Island style where it's like tossed in brown butter? Like that's really the question here. We really want to dig into it.
That is a great question. Jason very happily points out my Peak, Minnesota with the pronunciation of that taco. Yeah, I nothing. Scrambled eggs and ketchup. Sarah, you crazy. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm trying to think. There's that very famous Japanese dish. It's called Omu Rice, I believe. It's a rice omelet, but super delicious. And that they typically serve with ketchup, and very comforting food. You find it at a lot of the like Western style restaurants in Japan. You can find that. It's an omelet that's just filled with really nice rice, and it's decadent, but it's super tasty.
Paul says tater tot hot dish. We have a thing in Minnesota. It's chicken and wild rice soup. I think that's a comfort dish for a lot of people.
Pickled herring. I'm down with some pickled herring. Jeremy, I'm right there with you. That sounds good.
Foie gras. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the comfort food that we have coming out of Minneapolis right now is from the Handsome Hog. Love them. Justin Sutherland is incredible. I think he hand delivered someone's food today. So for an executive chef that's been on Top Chef to do that, that's pretty awesome. So today what we have is chicken biscuit, sunny side egg, cheese. There is a pork white gravy, and then there's mac and cheese with it. And the mac and cheese originally came with these flaming hot Cheetos on the side. So let's talk about this mac and cheese. The whole dish is amazing. Quite frankly, with the fried chicken, the Riesling absolutely cuts through that fat and shines so beautifully. The two complement each other incredibly. I think it does the same with the pork gravy, but I really want to talk about this mac and cheese because I sort of nixed the mac and cheese idea. Last week when we were planning, I said, I don't think we need it. It's going to be too much food. Also, like, I don't think it's going to work. Your flaming hot Cheetos came on the side. I didn't think it would work with the Cheetos. So the mac and cheese on its own is lights out with this Riesling, like absolutely lights out. The Riesling comes in and like cleans everything. They complement each other so well. The flaming hot Cheetos add not only some spice, but they add texture. And because there's a little bit of residual sugar on this Pinot Noir, the flaming hot Cheeto mac and cheese and I'm going to eat with this Pinot Noir is absolutely out of this world. And I thought, nah, there's no way this is going to work. No, wrong.
Mm-hmm.
German rosé, specifically Pinot Noir, that's got a little bit of residual sugar on it. Come on, like, give me a break. I'm going in, Chris. I'm going in.
Yeah, I love it. We can get a little ASMR in there, the sound of you eating mac and cheese. I love it. Sounds good. So maybe as you are enjoying your mac and cheese, I can start to talk a little bit about maybe some of the food that we're having here in Houston, which is Vietnamese from Tien, which is this really amazing Vietnamese restaurant. It was new to me when I moved to Houston. I wasn't aware that Houston had such a diverse kind of, population until I got here. Like I mentioned, I'm originally from Boston. Houston's restaurant relocated me from Boston to LA to SF to Dallas to Houston in like a 3-year stretch.
Wow.
So I got a chance to see a lot of different cities, but when they told me that I was gonna start working at some of their Texas locations, my immediate thought was, oh God, I'm gonna be, in the land of cowboys, and Houston does host the rodeo, which I've gone to, and there's definitely a fair share of cowboy boots there. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, Houston is the most diverse city on a statistical level in the United States.
Amazing.
And there's a really just rich gastronomy of Vietnamese, Korean, Indian, really all styles of food. And it wasn't something that I appreciated till I got here. And inevitably, when you move to a city, you want to check out the spots that, are run by, these James Beard nominated chefs. You want to check out the places that are on like the Eater 38 list or something like that.
Absolutely.
But now, like, especially during the quarantine and in, the past couple of years of me living here, when friends come to visit, where I want to take them is, these really cool hole in the wall, joints.
Yeah.
Tien is one of those. It's, if you know Vietnamese food, you know that pho is normally seen as a breakfast. It's normally something that you have to start your day. So this restaurant opens at 8 a.m. So that people could grab it for breakfast, grab a banh mi.
I did not know that, and that means it's perfect for breakfast wine.
Breakfast wine.
Hello?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny we're using the phrase breakfast wine. Earlier for Wines of Germany, I created some episodes for my podcast that I run. Shameless plug, I have a podcast called By the Glass. Super fun.
And your podcast is great.
Thank you. It's pretty fun. You can stream it wherever you stream your audio content. It's on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, all the good things. But one of those interviews was with Weingut and
into it.
Yeah, so really great conversation. But he was talking about how his labels, signify whether the wine is a breakfast wine. These are his words. He said, a white label means that it's a breakfast wine, something that you can have for breakfast or take on a picnic, just a really casual, easy thing, and then he has his lunch wines, which have a gray label. And then his dinner wines are the ones that have like a black label, his GGs. But we had his Trollinger and it was fantastic. And he was like, this is a perfect breakfast wine. You can have it with anything. I mean, especially with a burger, like our people in New York, have in front of them. I think a burger with a Trollinger with a slight chill on that glass of wine would be perfect.
Absolutely. And specifically, this isn't a podcast of a voyeur, but specifically that Trollinger, we had that on the list all the time because I find that as a red wine, it pairs with everything. And I agree that I think it would be a really perfect breakfast wine.
Yeah. There's another producer down south, Andy Naus, with Selection Masal is the importer. And there's a reason that wine comes in a liter size bottle, right? The La Boutanche bottling. I mean, it's very crushable. So Vietnamese food, for me, what I think of when I think of Vietnamese is I think of lightness. There's always a perennial debate here in Houston because there are so many great ramen restaurants. Like, are you team ramen or are you team pho? And I love ramen. I enjoy it a lot. I was in Japan in February, and I probably ate my weight in tonkatsu ramen. But, you know, for me, what I love about pho is its lightness and this like very intense, like star anise, like herbal character.
Yes.
I think Dave Chang once made a joke that you take like a really good beef broth, you add lime juice and throw an Underberg in there, and you've got pho broth. But I think that really just speaks to how herbal and light and bright pho can be, which is why I think it's my comfort food. Because when I'm hungover, if I am not feeling great, like something that has that restorative quality that pho has is really, really good. Vietnamese food also has a lot of different herbal elements. Coriander, which is sometimes called Vietnamese cilantro. There's a lot of other, like, there's a lot of use of lettuce in Vietnamese cuisine as well. And I'm gonna show the banh mi that we have here. So people in Houston are having 2 banh mi's. One is a shredded chicken banh mi, and I'm gonna try to open this up a little bit without spilling its contents on my computer. But
okay.
We've got,
and also because one banh mi is not enough.
I know, the fact that I'm double fisting banh mi's right now, you know, like I'm gonna be very full for the rest of the day. But one is with pork, and the other is going to be with shredded chicken. They're both filled with cilantro. We've got cucumber, pickled carrots, a little bit of mayonnaise. I don't know if I said jalapeno. So there's a lot going on in here.
They're asking you to hold it up again.
Oh man. Here we go. So
I mean,
I'm gonna,
it's beautiful.
So a banh mi, right? Banh mi literally just means like wheat cake or bread. So it's banh mi and then whatever's inside of it. So wheat had to be imported to Vietnam. It wasn't something that they could grow there. So originally banh mi's were kind of this like part of this like caste-like system that was created when it was a French colony, where, you know, the Vietnamese didn't have access to good bread the way that, you know, the French did. Eventually in the 50s or so, this has become an OnlyFans live stream now. I'm not showing you guys my toes. Don't get excited. But yeah, so anyways, the sandwich gradually got democratized. You know, originally when the French were kind of like maintaining their colony, they wanted sandwiches that were similar to the ones they had at home, which was, you know, bread filled with butter and ham. I don't know if anyone here has had a butter and ham sandwich, but a very classic thing. So what the Vietnamese did was they replaced the butter with mayonnaise, because in a really hot, humid climate, mayonnaise was more stable than butter was.
Sure.
They'd put that in the sandwich, and then they'd add, you know, herbs, they'd add jalapeno, they'd add pickled carrots, things like that. So turned out to be a really great sandwich, and obviously it's been adapted a bajillion times with different fillings. But the key to any good banh mi is crispy bread, you know, herbs, cucumber, pickled carrots, all that good stuff. And for me, I'm gonna take a moment to take a bite of this and then have a little bit of wine. But
yes, get into it. I know we still have to get into LA, and I know LA's having tacos on the chat. Let me see. I saw somebody on the chat that said Allison says, I know we haven't gotten to LA yet, but agreed. The spice of the tinga chicken and the rosé is great. I mean, similar to the comfort food with the flaming hot Cheetos here, right? And the corn with the Riesling, absolutely. And so we should probably get into LA, right?
Let's talk about LA a little bit. So
I feel like this Zoom could go on for hours and hours, because we're both restaurant professionals, and this is the thing that we love to do more than anything. And so
Mexican cuisine, right? I think about a lot of the flavors that I enjoy in Mexican food. And I know that for the street corn that everyone in LA is having, there's a little bit of like a chipotle spice on there. In the tinga, there's a lot of spice in there as well. You know, there's also a lot of use of red peppers, green bell peppers, jalapeno. And kind of like we were talking about earlier, the more intense the cooking or the more intense the ingredients, the more I tend to gravitate towards a riper style of Riesling, generally speaking, or something with just a touch more residual sugar. As the intensity of the cooking method or the ingredients grows, I want just a touch more residual sugar or a touch more ripeness to the wine.
Right, because you need something that's going to like hold up to those flavors, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point of food pairing isn't like put two things together, see what happens. The point of food pairing is to really make sure that these two things complement each other, right? And so an intense food needs also an intense wine.
And I know we've talked a lot about Riesling, but there are other grapes coming out of Germany that work incredibly well. Streuerrebe is one that, to me, there's just such ripeness. You get that like guava tropical fruit note with Streuerrebe.
Beautiful.
I think that's great.
Beautiful tropical fruit note. We used to have the Keller Streuerrebe Cabinet on the menu, and I mean, Jason's on this Zoom. I paired that with duck broth with shaved foie gras on top. And because there's a little bit of like, that was an intense dish, right? So there was wild rice in it and hickory nuts and duck broth, foie gras, like that was a really intense dish. So it needed a wine that was equally intense, that had a little bit of sweetness. And those two things, the salt and the sweet and the richness and the acidity, like balanced out so incredibly well. Streuerrebe for me is like, I mean, unquestionably one of my favorite German wine varieties, period. But also as a wine, it can do so much. It can get people out of, like, if you get a dry Trocken Streuerrebe, one of my favorite producers is Katharina Wechsler. If you get a dry Streuerrebe, you can talk those people that normally drink New Zealand Sauv Blanc into Streuerrebe because those aromatics are really similar. The flavor profile.
I was going to say Sauvignon Blanc is a good parallel there.
Oh my gosh.
Just because, you know, for me, especially in blind tasting, you know, you get that like peach blossom or like orange blossom note. There's this really pretty floral character. And especially as we've gotten into riper and riper years in Sancerre, you get that as well. So Streuerrebe is an easy move from someone that was previously drinking SB.
Super easy parallel. And newsflash, I like it better. Like, I'm not trying to, you know, I love all my wines, but also no, I don't. I like some better. I think people do that with their kids. I like some better.
What producers of Streuerrebe, I know you mentioned Keller was one that you carried at the restaurant. Are there others that you really stan?
Well, I mean, Keller and Wechsler specifically, those are like, they were staples on the menu literally all the time. I will say I really enjoy, Hans Wersching has one, and we haven't had it in our market for a while. Nassim brings up a good point, Pfeffinger.
Pfeffinger with GWC,
Yes.
super good.
And I think Hans Wersching is going to be GWC now as well, because
it is, yeah.
The
Sylvaner is great from them as well.
Their Sylvaner is great. They make a Streuerrebe, like, that was one of my favorite experiences at the restaurant, was to be able to tell, even in retail now too. It's a little harder in retail for those of you in the retail game. One of my favorite experiences is being like, oh, you like this thing? You should have this thing. And then what I loved about the restaurant is I could like watch that situation unfold in front of me, where they're like, I don't know. And then they taste it and they're like,
yeah,
everything is like magic.
That's the one challenge with retail, right? Is that you don't get that immediate kind of response from someone that you do get in a restaurant. I know we've got a couple people in the chat that probably work retail. Corey, I know that you're in here somewhere. But for me, at least, you know, that immediate satisfaction of knowing that someone, like, you can pour them a taste of it and it's this aha moment where suddenly it all makes sense, you know? I also want to shout out Minges, which is imported by Skurnik, I believe, but Theo Minges, Weingut Theo Minges makes great Streuerrebe as well. Muller Catois in the fall.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. So good.
Yeah. A million times. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because at the restaurant too, what I could do with food pairings is say, well, okay, you don't want Riesling. I get it. You don't want Riesling. So I'm going to bring you the thing that you think you want, but then also, like, I'm going to bring you this. A little taste, and I'm going to bring it first. I'm going to say, like, I mean, these are like tricks of the trade, so do what you will with these, but I would say, like, hey, the bar's really backed up. I'm going to bring you a little kiss of this wine. You're just going to taste it first. You think you don't want it, but like, I already have it ready for you. And they'd be like, well, I mean, that can't be Riesling. like, yeah, German Riesling, and it's amazing. You're welcome.
I can't believe it's not Riesling.
I
Put it in a tub. That'd be great.
Okay, we should go to the chat, and then we should also start talking about questions, because this will go forever. First, we'll look at the chat. Let me see. Minneapolis crowd is rowdy. Classic. I know you all. Riesling, Allison said Riesling is a little too dry, but utterly delicious with the tinga. Fair, fair. So, I mean, I think we've sort of tackled that already by saying, if you're going to have a really bold flavor, like, you've got to sort of turn it up with a more bold wine.
And, you know, I know you talked about charcuterie earlier, but I want to think about cheese a little bit, and, you know, meats, but like generally, like the more intense the cheese, the more pungent it might be. Maybe a blue cheese, you know, a really intense, like soft rind, or you know, washed rind cheese.
Yep.
That to me is something that benefits from like a little more RS, or a more like assertive aromatic character.
Yep.
You know.
Yep, I agree. And I mean, we haven't even gotten to like a Riesling dessert pairing yet, because we're all having lunch today, but we could certainly do like cheese for dessert. Hello, Riesling. Hi. Hello, you know, Shui Reba. I'm trying to think of other late harvest. I did a dinner last week with two girlfriends that live in the city who aren't wine people, and we each ordered Thai food, and then I had them pick up a bottle of German Gewürztraminer, and the producer escapes me now. It starts with a V. Anyway, I can look it up, but I had them each pick up a bottle of this Gewürztraminer that had like a lot of sugar on it. And they both thought, you know, they're not in wine. They both thought, there's literally no way I'm going to like this wine. One, it's Gewürztraminer, WTF. Two, it's sweet. And then the Thai food showed up, and we all ordered different things, but we were Zooming, and that wine worked with every single food on the table.
It's always fun to see, you know, here in Houston, whenever someone's visiting from out of the market, especially like if there's an importer in town, or, you know, a winemaker, sometimes what we do is, rather than like that sales rep go and visit a bunch of different accounts, we would meet at a restaurant for dinner. And the people that were available that night would show up at this Szechuan restaurant. For us, it was a place called Pepper Twins. Great spot, like close by to a lot of different accounts. And we would show up for dinner, and we would taste that producer's wines. Generally, it would be an importer from maybe the Loire or something, you know, where we could have a bunch of, you know, like Chenin with a little bit of RS on it. But inevitably, someone would bring a bottle of German wine to the event. And especially with that Szechuan peppercorn, which kind of numbs out your palate, that tingling sensation that we talked about earlier from kind of that reductivity under screw cap, mixed with like that like little bit of fermentation, like it just like brightens things up so much. We've got a question in here.
Yeah.
Jason has asked a question. What is it? My favorite rosé wines in the world are almost always German. What is it about German wine producers' approach that creates these impossibly floral and drinkable yet super mineral pinks?
I mean, I think that's an incredible question. I think, at least for me, most of the German rosés I've had have all been, you all might be able to hear, I have a dog that is like very upset right now, and he was in a different room, and now he has like barged his way through the blockade I had. And so I'm dealing with a dog over here. So if you're wondering, that's what's going on. I'm trying to make him happy.
He just wants some Riesling. He wants some rose water.
I mean, that is really the truth. I think he would love some Cheetos too, but you know, gotta limit him. You know, most of the German rosés I've had are either Trollinger or Spätburgunder. And I will say, for German wine, you know what? Not even German wine. For wine in general, Germany is a very intentional and specific climate for Pinot Noir, such that I don't think that you get those flavors anywhere else in the world. And so for me, that's why I go this route, because no one else can do this thing. There's no other climate, and there's no other terroir that can produce this particular thing. It's just not possible. Additionally, I think that German winemakers and German producers have this attention to detail and this focus and this precision, and they do things that I don't think everyone else pays attention to. And so, no question, the first rosé I reach for is German, and I've talked about a Kohler Ruprecht Riesling or rosé in the past because I know that it's going to give me depth and precision and focus and also richness and a little bit of RS for like those food pairing capabilities. And I've never shared a German rosé in which someone said, nah, this isn't for me. That's literally never happened.
I think, you know, someone mentioned it in the chat, but cool climate, I mean, the fact that you're in a cooler place, you have producers that are trying to highlight that brightness, that freshness. You know, they want to make a rosé that, you know, does the same sort of heavy lifting that a Riesling does. It's a great ambassador for the soil, you know.
No question.
Every producer that I talked to when I went to Germany back in 2018, you know, it was all about trying to make sure that they didn't fuck up whatever was going on in the vineyard. They're like, once we pick the fruit, then it's on us to make sure that we are able to not mess this up. You know, the vineyard is going to give us an amazing product. Now it's up to us to like translate that experience. And so for them, it's really trying to take the least interventionist approach to making that wine as an expression of that vineyard and of, you know, that climate.
Yeah, for sure. What else is in the chat? I think the chat is so fun. I had other questions for the chat too, but we're not even going to get to them.
Well, maybe we can submit a little poll to people that are out there tasting the food and drinking the wine and all that good stuff. You know, we thought it would be fun to poll everyone out there, the audience, about what you guys think of these things. So I think we've got some tech on hand that might be able to submit a question out to the audience.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here we go.
That's a good one. What type of cuisines do you typically pair with off-dry Riesling?
Oh, it says we can't vote.
I know, sad.
I will not answer that. I will say though, like getting back to Mexican cuisine, there's a place here in Houston. It's a taco truck that is widely considered to be the best taco truck in Houston. It's called Tacos Tierra Caliente. I think that I've probably had more tasting appointments at that taco truck than at my own wine bar. People from out of town want to go check out this taco truck. So I've had appointments with my Kermit Lynch rep at, you know, Tacos Tierra Caliente. Now, the idea is that the taco truck is next to an ice house, which for people that don't know what an ice house is, it's kind of like a beer garden. It's a place.
He says West Alabama Ice House, baby.
Yes.
I also have no idea what an ice house is.
So ice house would be the idea that, like, you know, in the early 20th century, you needed a place where you could kind of cool off and relax. And the ice house was the place that did it. They would have very cold beer. It was kind of a place where you could go and hang out. I think
is that
this particular one,
like, it's cold here.
It is. I wish it were cold here. I think I've worn pants, not worn pants, but I've been in shorts at least for most of this month. And growing up in Boston, I always relate the months of September and October in Houston to, you know, March and April in Boston, where you're ready for the weather to change. In Boston, you're ready for, you know, winter and spring to kind of like end and for summer to start. And here in Houston in October, in September, you're ready for summer to be over. You're ready for autumn to begin. You look at the rest of the country having their pumpkin spice lattes and wearing their light jacket, and we're still here dealing with 90-degree weather. It's miserable. So
yeah. So the poll, overwhelmingly people pair with spicy food, but a lot of people also pair with all of the above, which I do too. So that's fair.
So I think spicy is a really challenging category for a lot of other styles of wine because especially with tannin, right? Tannin on a chemical level, the way it binds with saliva in your palate, it can make spicy food taste spicier, which maybe some people want that.
No,
I don't. But
I don't either.
tannin and alcohol will make spicy food taste spicier, which is why I think German wine in general, that tends to be, even the reds, low tannin wines, and across the board, all the wines being lower in alcohol.
Right.
You know,
that was the thing I was going to say. Normally, I see people trying to pair spicy things with high alcohol, and like, they just don't work. It just doesn't work. Ooh, Indian food. I love that. And you were just talking about curry last night.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had these wines last night. I opened the bottles so I had something to kind of like drink while I watched the debate. But had the wines with some curry that we made, and they worked really well with that. I'm shouting out all these restaurants here in Houston, but there's an Indian restaurant called Himalaya, which is so good. And that's another place that we go to with people visiting from out of town, with really amazing cuisine. The paneers are fantastic. You know, the curries are good, but for us, all the other things. He has an Indian fried chicken, which is fried chicken spiced with like typical Indian flavors, and that's super good. So
yeah, Stephen, I think that's a good call. They're making butter chicken tomorrow night, so they're saving some of the wine for that. I agree. I think the Riesling will work, and I also think that the rosé will work really well with that.
Off-dry Riesling and intensely salty, like cured foods, bacon is bomb. I agree. So Serena, yeah. I'm 100% in agreement with that. And other salty foods too. I know that someone earlier mentioned like, I think it was kipper or some sort of fish, but like smoked salmon or the other thing I really love is I've been really into tinned seafood lately. Shelf stable, you know, conservas from Jose Gourmet or anything like that.
And those can be so salty that I've had an issue, you know, in theory, I want to like pair them with maybe a muscadet or sometimes chablis. And those can be so salty that they don't actually work. And so I think Riesling with a little bit of sugar on it is the solution there.
The other, we haven't talked too much about the white Pinot varieties coming out of Germany, but both of those I think can be really great with a lot of the things that we're talking about. Pinot Blanc or Pinot Gris or Grigio.
I had a vice there just a couple weeks ago with a salt dish from Mr. Paul Hennessy, who's on this thread, or a squash dish. I said salt. Squash dish with Paul Hennessy, and it was a Weissburgunder from Cola Ruprecht, and it was lights out. Like those two things worked so incredibly well together. It was salty and it was a little savory, and of course the squash brought this beautiful sweetness to the dish, and it just was perfect with that wine.
Are there other producers of Pinot Blanc or Pinot Gris, Grauburgunder, Weissburgunder that you really vibe on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cola Ruprecht is the one that comes to mind the most.
I'm a really big fan of Rebholz, their Pinot Blanc, out of the Pfalz, fantastic.
For sure.
Really big fan of that. So
I think it's Fritz Mueller. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're with GWC. They make that really fun frizzante, Müller-Thurgau, which I love. So
that one's great, but they also have and Becker makes a Grauburgunder that I really love, but I think Fritz Mueller also makes a Weissburgunder that is like so good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're giving a lot of love, like
Serena with the Enderle and Mole.
Yes.
I love all of Enderle and Mole's wines. I have a bottle of the Liaison red Spätburgunder that I'm just holding on to. But they make a couple of different Müller-Thurgaus that I really love. They do the Muller, which is the one that has skin contact, that I will literally drink as many bottles as I'm allocated. You know, it's funny, but Von Boden doesn't get it.
Because it's completely allocated and it's so incredible. Steven brings up the Weissengrau, which we had on the menu, and like that wine, give me a break. Great.
Yeah, I mean, all of those Enderle and Mole wines are so good. Really delicious. If you haven't tried them, anyone that's you know listening in, Go find that producer. It's imported by Von Boden.
Yeah.
So good.
Producer. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're giving a lot of love to Von Boden here. We're giving a lot of love to the German
GWC,
German Wine Collective, but which is fairly new. Like I just got that back in my market within the last couple of months.
Previously, the Rudy Wiese portfolio, most of that transitioned to GWC, but Skurnik also brings in a lot of really fantastic wines. The other, I say this because we just had a tasting of stuff from Broadbend, but I think it's Dr. Herman, right? That is with them. Louis Gutram's with them. But especially when you get into those Rieslings that are aged sur lie, where there's a little more of that like Lys aging. You mentioned earlier Muscadet, but those Rieslings tend to have a little more weight to them and can benefit to being served alongside something creamier. Oak is something that can 9 times out of 10 gets in the way of whatever you're eating. But with certain dishes, especially really like buttery dishes or things that are baked, something with a little bit of oak can go a long way. And I do think that some of these wines that are aged in like old fooders that maybe the wine also has seen a little bit of like Lys contact, those have like a little more density, a little more creaminess to them, and those work really well.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I think you and I could talk for hours and hours. So let's wrap this up for now. For another food pairing session, TBD. We will absolutely do this again. Obviously, we need to have Ruth in here. But for now, we're bringing back Sophie. And thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Wines of Germany. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ruth. And Sophie, take it away.
Awesome. Chris and Amy, thank you so much. That was so great. And on behalf of Wines of Germany, thank you all for joining us. This is the conclusion of our German Wine from Home series. So we will be posting all of these sessions on our website for you to check out. Please reach out if you have any questions. Keep in touch with us and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.